Hi AP Economics students, Mr. Muller here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about model building and gains for trade. Sounds extremely interesting, doesn't it? No, it sounds pretty dry, but what this video is really talking to us about is why do we use so many graphs in economics? What is the purpose of that? What is the end goal of those types of things? And in this particular video we're going to introduce one model for understanding trade and understanding why people or countries trade with each other. Hope you're excited. I'm excited. Let's get started. So, when we're looking at economics in terms of why we have all these charts and graphs in economics, we really have to go back to the idea of the scientific method. And we use this method to make comments, to make generalizations about how economies work for individuals, for businesses, for countries. These are called theoretical economics. Things like, I think that every country should have health care and it'll be efficient. Well, if I just say that and I don't test it, it's just theoretical. But let's say someone comes up with a process to test that theory or that idea or that formula that an economist comes up with, then it's going to be called policy economics, where you take a particular theory or a model for looking at the world or individuals' buying decisions or the decisions that businesses make and apply it. When that happens, you can have different types of statements when models are used. You could have positive statements. Now, this is not positive like that's good. Positive like that is observable and a fact. It's not an opinion. It doesn't have to be argued. It is plain to see from the evidence we get from whatever model we're using that this is the way it is. A positive statement could be luxury cars are less efficient economically than standard luxury cars. Now, do I really know that? No, but it's just from data you could see that it could be agreed upon. A normative statement could be something like every country in the world should provide free health care for their citizens. That is an economic statement because to do that would require taxes and money and things like that. But that's an opinion. It's not a completely true, inarguable fact. So there are positive statements we can make based on models and normative statements that we can make based off models. It could be describing what ought to be. So why are there graphs in economics? It allows us to compare two different things or multiple things. In this particular class, you'll only be looking at two, maybe three different variables as we start this foundation. If you go into this further, you're going to be looking at multiple variables in economics. So, the model we're going to be talking about today is called the Product Possibilities Frontier, or PPF for short. I don't want to say Product Possibilities Frontier every single time. Try to say that 5 times fast. Don't do it. You can't. PPF is a model that illustrates the combination of outputs that a society or an individual can produce if all of its resources, its natural resources, the equipment that it has, the labor that it has, the money that it has, are being used. So, for instance, if I use all the hours I can stay awake and all the money that I have and all the equipment that I have, how much of something can I produce? When all of your resources are utilized and output is maximized, the outcome is considered efficient, just a particular term to know. Whenever society is producing or an individual is producing on this model, the only way to get more of one good is to accept less of another. So if I had to decide if I was going to make, personally, computers or pizzas, we put these on the model, and using all of my time and energy and all the resources I have, I can make this many pizzas or this many computers, and there's a curve on it. It's not, if I only had these two options, how could I allocate time to make each resource? But when that happens, there's a trade-off. If I'm choosing to make one more computer than I do a pizza, then I'm having a trade-off because I'm not using that time I previously set to make pizza. So there's a trade-off. I can't make maximum both of one thing. And that really brings us to the idea of the law of increasing opportunity cost, which means the opportunity cost of producing a good rises as a society produces more of it. The opportunity cost of producing a good rises as a society produces more of it. The reason being is as you're producing more of it, you're giving up more and more time, more and more alternatives that could be maybe a better choice or more efficient. So let's actually take a look at what the heck this thing is. A PPF looks like this. Sometimes it'll be a straight line. Most of the time it will be curved. And the reason that it's curved is because of diminishing returns. The idea that sometimes if you do one more, you're not going to be able to do it at the same efficiency level. So let's say you have someone and they say, if I've used all my money and my resources and my time and everything, I can either make pizzas or I can choose to make sugar. Points A, B, and C on this chart are efficient outputs. And again, efficient outputs are when all your resources are utilized and you're producing the maximum that you can. D and E are inefficient because not all of your resources are fully utilized. And this point F would be something like, it's a point I'd love to be able to make pizzas or sugar, but I don't have the resources yet. I haven't invested in maybe technology or enough resources to become more efficient or more productive, rather, in creating these resources. So let's look at another one of these graphs. Let's say that I'm a business and I can either produce wheat or cotton in some combination. And I need to determine which one I'm going to create or how much of each resource I'm going to make. There's an important idea here of the idea of increasing opportunity cost, because as you start to create more of one than another, you have more opportunity cost because you're giving up more time and effort to do that. But there's also this idea of diminishing returns. Again, this is marginal thinking. I have less returns as I produce more and more cotton. I have less returns as I produce more and more wheat. This idea is that as you put more resources into creating something, you're not going to get it at that same rate. And that's really what we find in any particular business, because at some point you're going to run out of time, space, equipment. It's not going to be as efficient. So let's talk a little bit more about why the PPF graph or model exists. Because in an isolationist world, a society can only produce more technological gains or more workers. There is a maximum output that a society can produce. But if they want to be more efficient at creating all of their things, they specialize. And we said this in the prior video. Specialization is limiting one's work to a particular area. Instead of saying I could produce either wheat and cotton in some combination as a business, I'm going to specialize in creating either wheat or either cotton. Well, let's say I'm a country and you know what? I'm efficient at creating cotton, but I also need wheat. Well, now you create the environment where trading can happen. The reason why specialization exists is really maximizing the resources and time that you have. Are you going to be okay at a lot of things, or are you going to be really good at that one thing? And if I'm an individual, I don't want to try to study law and medicine and engineering and education and art and music. I'm not going to be really specialized in any area, which isn't going to make me marketable for a job. But if I specialize in law, then I could use that specialization to get a job and get money for it to buy goods and services. That's why you as a person have one job instead of 50 jobs. And you do one or a few things in your job that are all around one particular field of study, but you're not doing 50 different disciplines in your job. In larger terms, when countries specialize, this creates the environment for trade. So when two people or two businesses or two countries trade because they're specializing in particular things, there are different advantages that get created. Because not every person has the same sets of skill and time that another person has, or countries don't have the same resources or capital or amount of labor to produce particular goods, not every person or country is going to be able to create different products at the same level. So when two individuals or two countries trade, there are different types of advantages that can be created. And we're going to look at a PPF chart in just a second with this, but if you want to determine something called absolute advantage, which is the ability of one producer to make more than the other producer with the same quantity of resources. That's really easy, okay? Who can make more? That's just looking at the numbers. What number is larger? That's absolute advantage. Comparative advantage is when the opportunity cost is lower than the person or the country you're trading with. Now, the reason as a country or individual you want to have comparative advantage is because you want to be able to tell that individual or tell that country, I can make this good more efficiently than you could. So let me focus on X and you could focus on X, and then we'll trade. So we can maximize the limited resources we have, scarcity, and trade. You also can't have comparative advantage of the same good. The opportunity cost is not going to be exactly the same for individuals or countries. We're not that robotic. If two individuals have the same opportunity cost in the production of some good, then none of them has comparative advantage. So you can't have comparative advantage if the opportunity cost is at the same level. Also, why would they trade? Because neither has an advantage. And the gains from trade come from the differences in opportunity cost, not from saying I produce more than you. So if I can produce more goods than another person, but just because I'm producing more doesn't mean I could gain from trade. They could have a better opportunity cost, a comparative advantage, even if I have absolute advantage on everything. So let's look at an example here to illustrate what we just talked about. I know I just threw out a lot of weird terms for you, and you're just trying to sink it all in your head. Mr. Muller, man, you're making my brain explode, and I think I can feel some internal bleeding going on here. Let's actually try and illustrate this idea. Now, I'm not going to take this from a position of two countries. Let's just keep it between two people. We got Deborah and we got Mike. Deborah and Mike can create one of two goods. Why not 50? You don't want to get that complicated. Let's just keep it at two goods. Okay, we're just learning how to use these models here. So they can, let's say they can either produce pizzas or they can produce chicken wings. Now Deborah can produce 60 pizzas with all of her time and equipment. Maybe she has a better oven than Mike. Or she can produce 120 wings. She could produce 60 pizzas or 120 wings. Mike maybe doesn't have as much time, not as good of resources, doesn't have as much money to buy ingredients. If he used all of his resources, he could create in one day, let's say, maximum 24 pizzas or maximum 72 wings. Now the question, let's keep it really simple. Which person has absolute advantage on wings? It's the person with the bigger number. So Deborah has the absolute advantage on wings, and she has the absolute advantage on pizzas. She has the absolute advantage on both things that she can create. So does that mean she should not trade with Mike at all? No. So how can they determine what they should trade and what they should specialize in making? Well, it's very simple. All you have to think about is who has a lower opportunity cost. Well, how do you do that? All you have to do is divide, and you want to write this down. You want to divide what you're giving up by what you're choosing to focus on. There's your first mathematical formula. It's simple division. What are you giving up divided by what you're focusing on? So let's see who has the comparative advantage in pizzas. So all you'd have to do for Deborah, you'd have to say, okay, well, what is she giving up? She's giving up 120 wings. So you take 120 and divide it by what she's focusing on, pizzas, 60. So she has an opportunity cost of 2. for pizzas. What would Mike's be? Well, 72, giving up 72 wings for pizzas. 72 divided by 24 is 3. So Mike has an opportunity cost for pizzas of 3. Who has the lower opportunity cost? Deborah. What does that mean? Deborah should focus on making pizzas. Now, if you want, you could do a little bit of a test to see if you can calculate comparative advantage. Find and see if you want to do it for wings. Use that same process I went through and figure out who should produce wings. Who has the comparative advantage on wings? Now pause the video, do it. Did you do it? Well, the person who has the comparative advantage would be Mike, because 0.33 is less than 0.5. So now that we've looked at the PPF model, let's talk about how it can change over time, because let's talk about life, guys. Life can change very quickly depending on certain circumstances. If you're a business, you always want to be producing more. So what you're going to think about is, as an individual or a business, should I consume the profits I'm making, or should I invest what I'm making? When you invest, you're using the resources that you create to buy new capital. So that could be education, that could be money, and those investments result in opportunity costs because, well, okay, I'm putting money in to buy updated computers for the school that I am the headmaster of, or I'm going to go to college for 2 years and get specialized in something, but again, you're giving up alternatives. There are two types of goods that can be produced by individuals, by firms, by countries. Consumer goods produced for now. For instance, I went to Carrefour to go to the grocery store. I bought consumer goods. I bought food. I am going to consume that. Firms or individuals can also create capital goods. These will produce other valuable goods and services. So I can produce a 18-wheeler truck, and it's not really used to be consumed now. It's going to be used to provide goods and services. Things like factories to produce more of whatever I'm trying to make. I'm going to invest in computers to run my company faster or more efficiently, or get a smarter algorithm. I don't know, I'm not a computer guy. Those are the typical types of goods you have. And when you invest, the PPF model can change. So let's take a look at an example. In the short run, I have two goods that I can produce, and let's say I'm going to produce this much, if there's a number here, of one good, and this much of another good, just looking at the chart. Let's say I'm investing. I'm going to create more capital goods. I'm going to create a better infrastructure for my business with computers, or I'm going to build a different factory, or I invest in more labor. Well, what I can produce can go up. So instead of the PPF model being here, it can move to here. And suddenly, I can create more of these two goods. Now, depending on how much I invest, that could affect how much growth occurs. So maybe I invest a little bit, it could grow just a little bit. Maybe I invest a lot, it could grow a lot. Something to also know with this model is that the growth that could occur might not be equal for particular goods. If, let's say, I can produce pizzas or chicken wings, right? I can invest in better pizza ovens. Well, that's not going to affect chicken wings. Let's say if chicken wings were down here. So the PPF won't change here, but it might change for pizzas up here. So the curve might look more like what I'm doing here. Well, that is our lesson on, the product possibility frontier. In class, we're going to be focusing on a lot of examples. So we're going to be taking this video with its basic concepts and then applying it to a lot of situations, asking you to create and analyze these curves for yourself. Well, that's all there is for today. Hope you learned something you didn't know before. Thanks for watching.